I have a question in the comments in YouTube. Dear Samuel, I think we, however, are, or rather can be, in control of what we decide to be aware of. Looking back on my life and the experiences I'm having every day, as soon as I decide something without changing my mind to something else, it happened just the way I decided 100% of the time. Life reflects our beliefs constantly. Rather, we can project our beliefs so that they would appear as respective life experiences. If we choose to believe life isn't in our control, by control I really mean here not awfully intense labor or manipulation of some sort, but rather just simply by means of internal decision making, then of course that's how we will perceive it. There is no one experience that we as awareness can use the faculties of our focus and mind in any way we please. I have experienced unconditional happiness for a period of time until I jumped back into the ego train by a conscious choice. It was most magnificent experience. I was constantly just so happy. Yet I didn't have any control, like you said. Now I'm learning how to be aware of being awareness and yet still make decisions about life and to see them materialize in front of me from this place. I prefer control because since I have discovered we have this power to choose and receive exactly what we choose, I don't see why not to use it rather than blissfully drifting while not blissfully choosing. I don't see why not to use it rather than blissfully drifting, why not blissfully choosing? Very beautiful question and very nuanced. So I'll start from the beginning. I think I think we, however, are, or rather can be in control of what we decide to be aware of in our experience. It depends again who we are referring to when we say I. For our true I, our true self, this one infinite being, the only being that is the source of everything that exists. So it is creating everything. So in this moment, there are these arising gesticulations of the limbs through the body, and they are arising from this one source that we all are, the source that you are, the source that I am is one. So we could say from that perspective, and there is a genuine feeling of being the source of these actions, which the ego mind interprets to be a personal free will. But in reality, the free will comes from this one infinite being. It is the freedom, the unbounded freedom that generates the entirety of manifestation. So as it, ourself, witnesses the arising of manifestation, it experiences that it is the will, it is the generator of this, but not as a separate generator, as the very substance of the modulations of itself, the substance that goes into the make of the movement. Yet the substance is absolutely still. So the stillness of our being is not controlling the movements that are taking place because stillness remains still. For control to take place, there must be a movement. But the stillness of being, and it is still because it is infinite. There is no medium in which it is moving. It is the infinite presence of being. It is always still, changelessly still. So it does not perturb itself to create movement. Movement spontaneously arises as, and this is why the Buddha used the word dream or illusion, because the movement is not fundamental to the stillness of reality. That is, the movement is an appearance, just like a dream. We can sit perfectly still, and this is only an analogy, and the body is like this medium of consciousness. The body is perfectly still, and a thought rolls by. Evidently, that thought and its movement and the seeming movement with the thought is an illusion because we, in this analogy, are the body that remains perfectly still. We don't go with the thought. There is the illusion of moving with the thought. So deeper still than the relative surface level stillness of the body is the basic stillness of being, which never moves. So the stillness of being is not moving right now. The body is moving, but the very substance of this movement is not moving. So that substance isn't controlling the movement and is also not choosing the movement. For the choosing process would require that prior to the movement, there be a selection of options. And within those selected options, there would be a specificity of one choice, one option to create. So the hand moves left or right. So there are two options there. But there are also many other nuanced options available within the left and the right, how the hand moves and so forth. So are all of those options available to this infinite being we are? We could say they are in potential, but what does that mean, in potential? If an option is available in potential, we can only refer to the potential of the option from the point of view of the mind that has already conceptualized the option being left or right. Prior to the conceptualization of the option left or right, there is just the pure silence of infinite being. And it is not knowing itself as a plenum of infinite potentialities. That is a string of conceptual formulation. That is not intrinsic to infinite being as conceptual knowledge. The words potentiality, options, choices, control are not fundamental to infinite being. Infinite being is the silence that precedes all conceptualization, the stillness that precedes all movement, and remains constantly present throughout all movement. So, in my experience, and just get a flavor of this, my being, I'm speaking to myself here, and you are listening to yourself. So get the flavor of this through a transmission of empathy, of being to being, recognizing the truth of this. Beneath the words, of course, the words are helpful for the mind, but beneath the words is the recognition of this, which will seem paradoxical from the point of view of the mind, always, but from the perspective of awareness, being this infinite substance of reality, there is no paradox. From the point of view of the mind, there seem to be choices. Like, do I choose to go left? Well, that's right. Left or right? How do I know? Left happened. And like you say, later on, it's interesting that you comment that I prefer control because since I have discovered we have this power to choose and receive exactly what we choose, I don't see why not to use it rather than blissfully drifting. So, in a sense, we choose, but it's not quite an accurate word for the experience of being choosing. Again, it would be a concession to language to say we choose. It would be closer to say that we create. We just create what happens from moment to moment. We as what is the question. We as this infinite being create what happens from moment to moment. But the mistake is to believe that we as this infinite being have an ability within us to search through an infinite or a finite plenum of possible forms of experience to manifest and then select a specific option to manifest. We never have that ability. Such an ability is fabricated by thought. It is imagined to exist in retrospect or prior to the moment. Say, I have five options available of where I would love to go for dinner, five different restaurants. And I've had this thought. I've had the thought there are five different restaurants. Which one will I choose? So we have these kinds of thoughts on a personal level. I have five different restaurants, and I'm going to choose one to attend this evening. So what happens in between that thought and the next thought? There is a dropping of all thought. And in that space of pure stillness of awareness, there is no choosing process. There's no controlling what's happening. There's no, ooh, let me dig into this infinite emptiness of awareness that I am to find a potential, bring it out, and then choose option three. If we look at our experience, there is the thought, there are five restaurants. There is the pause, which is this silence of awareness. And then there is the thought, option three. So, yes, we, as this infinite presence of being, are the creator of that option three as a decision. But did we have any control over it? No. So, you say, looking back on my life and the experiences I'm having every day, as soon as I decide something without changing my mind to something else, as soon as I decide something without changing my mind to something else, it happened just the way I decided 100% of the time. Yeah, I agree that there are these correlations between what we hold in mind and its tending to manifest in our experience. Yes, in the example of the five restaurants and the option three, Italian, there is a fixity of intention and attention which happen spontaneously and uncontrollably on that option, and that focusing brings it forth into manifestation. We plan, we organize, we exert energy to bring forth this plan to go for a meal with a friend at an Italian restaurant. And maybe we have a specific restaurant in mind. So there is a correlation between what we think and what happens in our experience. But the mistake is to believe that we, either are a separate entity, and of course that would be a dreaded mistake, or to believe that we, even as infinite awareness, have control over our experience, because we don't. But we can recognize that we are the creator of what happens. So, in that sense, we don't feel like a victim. We feel we have utmost autonomy and sovereignty and freedom of will to create whatever we would love to create. So, perhaps that's what you're intuiting correctly, that there is this genuine feeling within us from the perspective of awareness, knowing itself as infinite, that it is the creator and there is freedom. So there is freedom to create, but simultaneously, that freedom is a surprise as it arises. So, so when you say here, I have experienced unconditional happiness for a period of time until I jump back into the ego train by a conscious choice. See, this kind of statement sounds like it's coming from the free will of infinite being experiencing its unconditional happiness, which is intrinsic to itself, for a period of relative time until I jump back into the ego train, until I, infinite being, spontaneously and uncontrollably, yet out of my freedom, created the ego train. So this has been a wild and jungle-like exploration. Hopefully you can feel the resonance underneath the words. The mind cannot grasp this because it is a collapse of a very basic duality between movement and stillness, between change and the changelessness of being. They are one, but the mind cannot really visualize or verify that experientially. Only the infinite stillness of aware being can verify this, that its changelessness is the substance of apparent change. So we could use the analogy of the screen in the movie, that the screen is still changeless relative to the movie. So the stillness is not manipulating the movement in the movie. It's got no mechanism within it to manipulate the movement, nor has it got a mechanism within it to choose how the movie will unfold, or even what kind of movie will appear. It impassively and impartially witnesses the movie arise spontaneously. So it's the same here with our being. Our being is aware of the entirety of the cosmos moving within itself, made of its stillness. So that revelation there, experientially, is what clarifies this question of control, choice, free will. That silent experiencing. But if this seems somehow unsatisfactory, please give me a follow-up. And if you could condense the question to a very clear, short formulation. It will just ease the answer out more succinctly, hopefully, in clarifying.